Growth equals change. This sounds like my friend would call it a BGO. It's a blinding glimpse of the obvious. But I'm an organization change guy, and I have to tell you, after 38 years of doing this, I still love the idea that I will walk into a place and organizations will say, we want to improve, but we don't really want to change. And I'm saying, it doesn't work that way. You can't improve unless you change. So for me, in this kind of work, unless you appreciate the irony of being called in to create change, and then the minute you walk in the door, they start resisting, then you really have to go do something else, because if you can't stand that kind of paradox, you drive yourself nuts. I actually kind of enjoy it. It's sort of fun. So you can't grow without changing. One of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do is to challenge some of your assumptions and to think differently. I used to work at IBM long ago, and back in the day where think signs were all over the place, which I thought were pretty cool, until Steve Jobs came up with think different, and that's how they do it at Apple, and I think that's actually cooler. I'm going to hope you will consider exploiting your gifts and your talents. I think a lot of the time when people think about developing themselves, they get feedback or they do surveys or something. For some reason, people immediately look at what is it I don't do well? What's the bad news? And then they try to correct that. Like, okay, I understand that. It's not really that useful as a development strategy. I would say you get more mileage developing yourself if you look at what you do well and really capitalize on that. You need to be aware of your flat sides so you don't trip over them, but most people immediately tend to focus on what were the negative sides. I learned this from my dad, bringing home a report card with 6 A's and a B, and my dad said, what happened? And I learned from that, so now when my daughter does that, I will say, of the 6 A's that you got, which of those do you really love? That's the thing you should put extra time into, because the B is fine. So why don't you pick the thing that you really love and put time into that. So consider that when you think about your own development. This is a reality for me. Growth and comfort do not coexist. If you are learning and growing, by definition, you cannot be comfortable, because by definition, you're doing something a little different. So it's kind of a hard reality of the growth game in a way. You can't be growing your company or your business or yourself or your relationship without some discomfort. And I think because it's growth requires change, we're often talking about what's unknown. That's what requires courage. You got to be a little bold to grow yourself. The fact that you come here, however often you come to Toastmasters, to kind of try some different things requires a certain amount of courage, because you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You don't know what you're going to encounter. I love this. Everyone thinks of changing the world. No one thinks of changing themselves. It's true, really. Somehow thinking about it more globally is easier to digest. The thought of changing ourselves, not quite so easy. I should tell you one of my assumptions about growth. Growth is about being more of who you are. It's not about being different than who you are. Whenever I start a leadership development program, I know exactly what people are thinking. They come in and they're thinking, I'm being sent here to be fixed. And what that means is somehow the way I am is not enough. I need to be different. And I start off by saying to them, no. Actually, the reason you're successful, all of you, at what you do is because you're good at it. So it's not about being different than who you are. It's about being more of. So development for me doesn't mean you replace parts of yourself. It means you expand your range. So, whatever metaphor you like, put more arrows in your quiver or put more clubs in your bag. Development is about expanding your range at whatever you do. Could you play around the golf with just a 7-iron? You could. If you're me, it doesn't make much difference. But most people, if you have a full bag of clubs, you're more likely to be able to play better. That's what growth is about, expanding your range, not about changing. If you want to, we're going to talk about resistance in a little bit. You want to heighten resistance with people, you just tell them you need to be different than who you are. And watch, you will see resistance manifest itself.